101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is a strategy consultant, speaker, of course, an author too, and no other than Miss Janet Granger. Welcome, Miss Janet, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. This is so exciting. I'm very excited to be here. More about me. So I've been working with younger generations for the past, well, over 25 years, and in my marketing role. And I noticed in the past 5 years that many leaders were having difficulty managing Gen Z. Gen Z is usually people who are age 28 and younger in the workplace. So think 28 to 24 or 22. And so I wrote this book because I have been very successful in working and hiring and onboarding and retaining younger talent in the workplace.
And Miss Janet, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you for sharing this secret to managing Gen Z. The secret in the title. Let's start with the big promise. What is the fundamental secret or core mindset shift that a manager must make to successfully lead Gen Z, which is different from managing millennials or Gen X?
So the promise, the one core difference is understanding that Gen Z is very fragile and arrives in the workplace with a lot of fear. And unless and until you deal with all those fears, some of which are quite real, um, you're never going to be able to work with these younger workers. So it's understanding that they're not terribly resilient and how to deal with that in many different ways when it comes to managing them.
Managing them. So your book likely moves beyond the tropes of avocado toast or special media addiction. What is the most common and damaging misconception about Gen Z in the workplace that your book directly aims to correct?
Wow, there's so many. There's so many misconceptions um, that they're lazy and that they don't care and that they are totally unmotivated and that they a lot of people look at their habits and the fact that they have a lot of personal boundaries as a problem without understanding why. And so it's understanding the why behind it to see past, the exterior of what you're seeing and you're thinking and you're feeling. The other thing is that a lot of managers also get to look past their own frustration and their own fears of Gen Z. And so it's helping managers sort of my value add is that I include some neuroscience about how the brain works and how managers are actually managing these younger people to help them understand what's triggering them and what's frustrating them. So yeah, I dive into a little bit of neuroscience to try to help senior leaders understand how they, in fact, are reacting to these younger workers.
Miss Janet, how does the role of a manager need to evolve from boss to something else to effectively engage to retain Gen Z talent?
Yeah, that's a great question. So instead of just being the boss, the manager needs to, in some ways, take on a little bit of a parental role and understand what they're dealing with walking in the door. Sometimes they need to take in a little bit of a trainer role, right? So Gen Z may not understand the basics like what wardrobe is appropriate at work or what the hours are at work. Um, how to communicate well in the written form, right? They may be used to texting, and they're great on Teams or Slack, but they need to understand sometimes how to write better. So it instead of just being a boss and delegating, managers really do better if they are not only trainers but also parental, which means they're more empathetic, and they have to be willing to talk about what hasn't been talked about for a topic like mental health, right? So
Hmm.
if 60% of Gen Z claim that they are experiencing mental health issues, a manager needs to be able to talk about that and be comfortable and maybe even direct Gen Z employees towards resources that might be available through the company. So there's a lot more than just there's your desk, do your job involved in managing Gen Z.
Definitely. And Miss Janet, Gen Z is often described as a valuing purpose, transparency as a well being above traditional corporate ladder climbing. How can a manager align their team's daily work with these deeper values, especially in roles that are not inherently world changing?
So there's two ways they can do that. The first is to sort of teach, and to help, even if you're cleaning out a closet in a warehouse, it's to help every young employee understand how they are part of a bigger picture, right? It's like explaining how the custodian's job is important because, unless the floors are clean, that's a safety issue for everyone. So it's very important for them to feel that no matter how small or menial they may start out, that they are part of a bigger picture and they are important. The second uh, explanation that needs to happen is the pathway. So years ago, there was a company called William Morris, and they were agents for out in Hollywood for people who talent out there. And at William Morris, everyone started off in the mailroom. It didn't matter who you knew. It didn't matter where you came from. Everyone started off in the mailroom delivering the mail. And the the idea behind this is if you don't know who the people are, then you can't begin to help manage talent. So if you help people understand when they come in where they're starting and why they're starting there and what the path is upward for them if they choose to stay, the minute you show them a path, it's going to double your retention rates because they're going to see, oh, I need to do this to get to here. And oftentimes it involves something as simple as telling them how long they need to be in a job before they're eligible for the next level. So there are different ways to help them understand their role and the importance of their role and where they're going if they choose to stay in the company.
On a practical strategy and daily management, Miss Janet, Gen Z has grown up with the instant feedback. How should manager transform the traditional annual review into the system of continuous real-time feedback that actually motivates rather than overwhelms?
Yeah, I get this question all the time. Um, I think it's very important to set up individual one-to-one meetings with younger workers at least once a week, just to touch base. Even if it's just a 10 to 15-minute touch base on Friday afternoon. How did the week go? Which means they're going to ask you, well, how did I do this week? And it allows you on a weekly basis, so they don't go more than 5 days without some feedback, for you to say you did this really well, and next week we'll work more on that, right? So I
Mhm.
highly recommend weekly or every other week, very short one-to-one touch base. It's highly, highly effective, and those that do it feel like they are doing enough and not too much in terms of their own time.
Is a remote hybrid work a non-negotiable expectation for Gen Z? How can manager create structure, connection, and accountability in flexible work model without resorting to a surveillance or mistrust?
Yeah, so unlike unlike millennials, so millennials are aged 29 to 44 right now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Millennials really are the ones who want remote work. Many of them have children, and childcare is very expensive. Gen Z, 27 and younger, does not have to be remote all the time. They actually, because they graduated college and grew up with the COVID experience, they feel very gypped of the connectivity and the team experience and being with people. Unlike millennials, they really value coming to the office. Now, do they want to maybe have Mondays and Fridays where they can work from home and not deal with a commute? Sure. They would like to have some flexibility, but they are a much more amenable generation on whole to actually being in the office, and then you can have all your accountability and you can have all that oversight and everything that you want. They're not the troublesome generation really when it comes to this remote work issue and coming back to the office.
What does the radical transparency, Miss Janet, look like on a practical day to day basis? How can a manager be transparent about company challenges, decision making, and a career path without causing anxiety or oversharing?
Yeah, I don't believe in radical transparency when it comes to sharing all the machinations and the political stuff that's going on. Radical transparency in terms of the individual that's reporting to you and the team is helpful. They don't need radical transparency about all the stuff going on in the rest of the company because it'll just, as you said, make them anxious. So, be very careful with the radical transparency. It's important for something like, I want to know if I'm working for you, what my path looks like. I want to know what vacations look like. I want to know what my future looks like. But if you start sharing all the other stuff that you know is going on, it's going to scare the daylights out of me. So, radical transparency within a sphere that's relevant to me.
Relevant indeed. And how can managers consistently and effectively communicate the purpose of impact behind even the most mundane tasks to satisfy Gen Z's need for a meaningful work, Miss Janet?
Yeah, this gets back to the, if you're asking someone to clean a closet, why? Why does the closet need to be cleaned? Um, it's all about context, right? Context and understanding how you fit into the bigger scheme. If you're asking me to work a trade show and I have to be standing there all the time, tell me why I have to be standing there all the time. Depending on what the task is, um, always providing the bigger context is helpful. And and this should start at the job interview, right? At the very beginning in the job interview, explaining the context of what the tasks are and the activities are. Because if there's no buy-in at the interview phase, right, even before they take the job, then there's never going to be buy-in. So there's got to be radical transparency in the interview process of what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, and are you willing to do this?
Gen Z experts growth and development. How does effective personalized career development look like for this generation that's just beyond just promotion and pay rises?
Well, everyone's motivated differently, right? Some people
Mm-hmm.
are just there to punch the clock and get their paycheck, and some people want to stay there for as long as it makes sense monetarily. And I think that always telling employees what the pathway looks like for them is the way to do it. And having them see how others have done it. if you're telling them one thing and the reality is different, they're going to figure it out really quickly. Um, and if your wages are not competitive, they will jump at the chance to go to a job that pays, you know, 10, 20% more. Um, so, so being relevant and competitive from a wage perspective is always very important.
Miss Janet, as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals, as well as strategy consultant?
So my short and long-term goals are the same, which is I just want teams to work better together. I would love to eliminate age bashing in the workplace. It's not appropriate and it doesn't help anybody, and it certainly doesn't help the organizations in which people are working. Personally, my short and long term goals are I'm always looking for new clients who would be interested in my helping them. I do one on one coaching of managers as well as class training. Um, and I've been doing this for over 10 years now. I just really love making a difference and seeing a difference and helping organizations to retain their talent. Um, so yeah, I've gotten to this point in my career where I really enjoy talking about this. I love speaking to CEOs and seeing their sort of aha moment, like, oh, I didn't realize that was important. And I really enjoy that intrinsically.
Okay, good luck for that, Miss Janet, and looking forward for more success. And what will be a
Thank
piece of
you.
advice for those people out there who want to be a consultant as well as an author, as well as speaker too?
I'm sorry, what was the question? Advice?
Yes, a piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you.
Sure. Wow. So a piece of advice would be to understand what you do differently than everyone else and and share that, right? Everyone is everyone and Taylor Swift said this, be yourself because that's unique and you don't want to be anybody else anyway. I think that understanding what makes you different and writing it down and sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
When people ask for your bio, it's in your bio what makes you different. So it's really important to understand your own personal uniqueness and to hold that up and shine a light on it. That would be my advice.
Well, thank you for that advice, Miss Janet. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Sure. So this may be a little bit off the beaten path, but I believe everyone is on a self actualizing journey. And I have it here. One of the most interesting books I ever read, which really has helped me on my personal and professional journey, is The Untethered Soul. I don't know if you've heard of it by Michael Singer,
Mm-hmm.
but helping you understand your personal path and where you want to go and where you can go in this lifetime. I don't know. I think it's a really, really special book, and it had an incredible influence over me um, when I was starting off on my own. So that's my personal recommendation.
Thank you for that recommended book, Miss Janet. And beyond a paycheck, what is the most critical factor in returning top Gen Z talent for a long term?
Mm, that's a great question. I think that providing them a pathway for their future so they can see where they're going if they have ambition, not all of them do, but if they have the ambition to rise, showing them exactly what the path is, sort of here you are now, and if you do this and this and this and this, and for them to understand that they do have a future if they choose to stay in your organization. So I think having people understand what that looks like on a step by step basis is really important if you want to retain them.
Gen Z is highly attuned to mental health. How can managers proactively address burnout and promote sustainable work habits without compromising on them?
This is a great, great question. And the reason Gen Z is suffering from burnout is because of these things, because of our phones. You know, 30 years ago, when people left the office, they left the office and they left
Mhm.
it behind. They could choose to bring work home, but they went home and they didn't have to think about work typically um, until they came in the next day. That is not the case now. You know, people are on their phones all the time, 24/7. And I've had Gen Zs ask me, if my boss emails me on a Sunday night at 6 o'clock, do I have to respond at within an hour? And my thought is, why is your boss emailing you Sunday night at 6 o'clock? That's absurd. So, one of the best ways to keep Gen Z from burning out is to not make them work outside of the prescripted work hours, to not expect that if you have an idea and you send it to them, that they need to respond to you, to make it very clear those parameters of when they are and are not expected to return emails. That will go a long way to stopping the burnout for them constantly to think they have to be on their phones watching on vacation or on the weekends to see if their boss sent them an email that they have to respond to. I think that's the easiest and simplest way a boss can be responsible for preventing burnout.
Very well said, Miss Janet. Before we wrap up our discussion for today, I invite you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in its fourth season, as well as my love letters, movie 101 review, and music 101, science 101 and sex 101 in second season, and my baby podcast law 101, and mental health 101, and Bible verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Janet, if you could have every manager start doing just one thing differently tomorrow to dramatically improve their relationship with their Gen Z employees, what would it be?
To invite them to have a conversation over coffee or in their office and ask how they're doing. Just
Yes.
touch base, ask how they're doing, and listen to the answer.
Listen to their answer and implement what they want to be and go with them. So, Miss Janet Granger, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Sure. So, The Secret to Managing Gen Z, the handbook, is available on Amazon. That is my latest book, and hopefully, readers will find it helpful. I talk a lot about this and other things within the book.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Janet Granger because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering books for Gen Z will rise. So, Miss Janet, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This has been great.
More to come, people. See you soon.